paranormal. It surrounds us. It's everywhere. Tonight, you will hear from the people who live and work within these highly active locations, all in the efforts to discover America's most haunted. With your host, ghost hunter and author, Dan Terry.
Good evening, guys and gals, dudes and demons, and all you dearly departed who haven't departed yet. But that's okay. I'm not criticizing because, like they say in the Scooby-Doo theme song, couldn't have a show without you. My name's Dan Terry. I am your ghost host with the most haunted. And I'm coming at you here from the mysterious mountains of North Carolina, but this is nothing compared to where we're going in a few minutes. You folks who know me, you know I ghost hunt all over. I've been as far west as the Watt and Tarbell's funeral parlor in downtown Tombstone, Arizona, and as far east as, well, North Carolina, Wilmington mostly. I also went up to the Ohio State Reformatory in Mansfield, Ohio a few years ago, and all the way down into Florida through Arkansas. I have ghost hunted all over. I had absolutely no idea what West Virginia was like. I drove through it many times, had no clue. So a couple of months ago, I went to a ghost conference, and this was actually a conference of owners of ghost hauntings, ghost groups, ghost tours, things like that, tourists basically. And I went to this conference just to see what we had in this area. Boy, was I stunned. West Virginia alone. Trans-Allegheny Lunatic Asylum. We've all heard of that one. That's very haunted. The Flatwoods Monster. Still got the shirt, been to the museum. Flatwoods Monster was a close encounter, I guess, of the third kind. And back in 1951, the Mothman. And now you take the Mothman and divide that up. There was the cryptid, there was Men in Black, UFO sightings, and poltergeist activity, all included into this one situation. Lake Shawnee Amusement Park. If you can imagine, someone built an amusement park on the site of an Indian massacre, and it eventually had to close because of all the freak things going on there. And Moundsville State Penitentiary. That's a big one. The old hospital on College Hill. I've seen videos from it. I plan on interviewing the ghost hunting group that will be there sometime soon. And also and I just had them on the show about 2 weeks ago, the Haunted Majestic, which was a actual World War II hospital ship, which saw service on D-Day. They had hundreds of American soldiers wounded, being treated there, triaged, and sent on. So West Virginia has all these incredible haunted places. And to throw in another one, we're going to talk about, and I am going to butcher the name here, the Blennerhaus Hotel. It's in Parkersburg, West Virginia. When I was at this ghost conference in West Virginia, this girl came in, very attractive, very smart, and knew the ghost stuff. She'd been ghost hunting all over. Her name is Adra Johnson, and she works there at the hotel and runs ghost tours through it, as well as a ghost tour of the city of Parkersburg, which apparently is pretty crazy. We're going to talk about that too. So let's bring in Adra Johnson.
Hi, Dan.
There she is. Hey, I'm glad you could make it.
You did great on the name the first try. It was the other three that you kind of messed.
Figures. Okay, how do I pronounce it?
It is Blennerhassett Hotel, and that's named for Harmon and Margaret Blennerhassett. We're in very close proximity to the island where their famous mansion was. If you're a Hamilton fan, you should know the tragedy of Aaron Burr and Hamilton. That's where all of that went down. The island is said to be haunted as well. So we share a good name.
Really? Now,
Yeah.
I did not know. I thought that happened in New Jersey.
Nope.
For-
That part did, but the Blennerhassetts built a mansion on an island, which is about a 15-minute ferry ride from where we are right now.
Mhm.
The original mansion did burn down in 1811, but they built an exact replica on top of the foundations of the stones. So there's Native American activity there as well, and it's just all kind of in one spot.
Well, we'll have to talk about that. I'm sure you know about it. So, if I remember correctly, you were in New Zealand, you'd been in Europe, you'd been kind of traveling around investigating ghosts.
Yes.
Until the pandemic sent you back to the U.S.
Back to West Virginia. I am originally from West Virginia, right around Summersville, so I'm very familiar with the Flatwoods Monster. So yes, I have been investigating for about 6 years now. I decided to go more public with it when I was actually living in Australia, in Melbourne. So a place that really got to me there was the jail where infamous bushranger Ned Kelly was hung. And I was just overwhelmed with the activity out of that place. And I saw uphand what sort of, I don't know how to put it, how long lasting it makes these places when they have the edge of paranormal tourism to them. Trans-Allegheny is also a really good example of that, places that might have been lost otherwise if it weren't for the ghost stories.
Oh, right. Yeah, there's a place in Missouri that we did a lot of work with because it was General Harney's mansion, and he was a Civil War general.
Yeah.
And they managed to put a new roof, they totally rebuilt the building thanks to the ghost people.
Yeah, and so when I saw what kind of an effect it could have, and I came back to work at the Blennerhassett after getting, I thought at the time, displaced. Now I think it was kind of the energy, honestly, because the timing's just lined up perfectly for me to be able to take on being a facilitator of opening the paranormal tourism program here at the hotel.
And being in West Virginia, which I didn't know until, because you were the first speaker I heard on Saturday. And yeah, you was there. And that was opening up my eyes to how much weird stuff goes on in West Virginia. Why is that?
I have no idea. It might have something to do with the mountains. It's a little unassuming here, but my presentation, which for record, if you didn't make the conference, was about 35 minutes, and I went over that. I just brushed the tip of the iceberg. You're looking at all these other little cities in West Virginia, Parkersburg itself. Every time I feel like I learn something about this city, it comes up with 15 other things to learn.
Yeah, you were telling me before the show of a flood or water issue, and what was all of that in that area?
So Quincy Hill is this, it's a neighborhood still, it's a historical neighborhood in Parkersburg that has just seemed to have event after event. Quincy Hill has actually had a Mothman sighting. If you're not familiar with West Virginia geography, Point Pleasant is only an hour up the road from Parkersburg. So there were Mothman sightings back when the whole saga was originally going on. Following that, it was a special hospital during the Civil War. It was separated for Irish and colored soldiers. There is still remnants of activity up there for that. And following that in the early 1900s, there was like a freak accident. So it's way up on a hill, very steep. There's still a water tank there today, but at the time there was one that was not so stable. And in the dead of night, it burst and unleashed millions of gallons of water down onto these houses that are on the decline of the hill. In the process, a newlywed couple was killed, and it was a very traumatic event for the city. So there's still a lot of activity that takes place on Quincy Hill today.
There was so much you just said. Now, we know the Irish were not considered regular people at the time of the Civil War. Mm-hmm. They were just half a step above slaves.
Exactly.
But why would, I know they didn't get along either. So why would you put all of them together like that? It makes no sense.
They either didn't care, they just weren't conscious enough. I'm assuming that would have caused some further tension that might have to do with the persistence of the hauntings. Amy Allen's Dead Files actually investigated a house up on Quincy Hill at one point, and they got some pretty substantial activity, and it's just continued. Parkersburg was really a high place of interest for the Civil War. It being right where the river is, it was a point for the Union. Peter Van Winkle lived here. This was where it kind of split. This is where the decisions were made that West Virginia was going to separate from Virginia in the war. So there's definitely been strong ties on both sides here. It's been constantly clashing in one way or another.
And I know a lot of folks don't realize that's why there's a West Virginia, is
Yes.
there were people who wanted to stay with the North. Virginia was wanting to go with the Confederacy,
Yeah.
and they just split the state.
Yeah, exactly. And that all predominantly, at least the plan workings for it, took place here. There's a lot of Civil War history. A lot of the Jackson family is buried here, along with Peter Van Winkle and other people that were very prominent figures in the Civil War.
Well, when you lectured about your hotel,
Yes.
but also other places in West Virginia, because you seem to be, well, like I said, you amazed me at how much there is there.
Yeah. And that's been exciting as well, because we're just getting into the West Virginia topic. Then you go into Parkersburg, and there's at least an hour's worth to talk about in each of those subjects. Then you breach this hotel. And this hotel is fundamentally, as an investigator, there are very few places where I would just put my reputation right on the line and say, this place is without a doubt haunted. I've got
Okay.
one is the Lizzie Borden House in Fall River, without shadow of a doubt. And the second is this hotel. I felt that way before I even worked here. So it's got a lot of history. It's the oldest hotel in West Virginia. It was built in 1889. Colonel William Nelson Chancellor, he was a very prominent local businessman at the time. He actually served as mayor twice. And he had gone through a lot of businesses, bankers as well. This is the only surviving hotel that he had built. And we're actually oldest boutique. So following from that, I mean, it's got to be haunted, right?
Well, what ghost are you dealing with there? I know you said one of them is the original owner.
Yeah. So we do have apparitions of Mr. Chancellor. I think a lot in part to his strong ties to Parkersburg. He has been spotted other places outside of the hotel. His family home is just right up the road, which his family still resides in. So he has appeared. We actually have an original commissioned portrait of him down in the lobby, as well as some other of his personal possessions. So for me, it's feeling like he's just kind of here to enjoy and look over the hotel. But he appears as either himself, which is a tall, slender, older man, very distinguished, dark suit, or he can just be a tall black shadow. He's also oftentimes accompanied by vanilla cigar smoke. So he is one of the biggest reoccurring. There's actually times where guests will come down into the lobby where his portrait is, have no knowledge of the place, say, we saw this guy in the room. He looked like this. Look at the portrait. That's him. It's incredible.
Any particular room, or is it all over the hotel?
It's generally all over the hotel. He does seem to favor the second floor. I think that has to do with, in the 1800s, it was a social area. It would have been somewhere that he really enjoyed to hang out. There's also a block of the third floor where he can be seen. But he's very selective who he interacts with. It took me months to get an interaction from Mr. Chancellor. But David Worley from Haunted Beckley, who I work with quite a lot, he has a history in banking. You know, he's a very classy guy, older guy, and he got in touch with Mr. Chancellor the first time he came to investigate here. So it's a little selective. But he's probably the most calm spirit that we have here, I would say.
And then there's a woman haunting it.
Yeah. So for the hotel in general, it's hard to sort of condense it. I like to call it, especially on my tours, sort of the Grand Central Station of ghosts. Because I feel like there's a lot of residual energy, passing through energy. There's been a lot of paranormal activity immediately surrounding the hotel that I feel like travels. But as far as resident ghosts, we do have 3. So the first is Mr. Chancellor, who I just explained. The second one is also on the second floor. She is confined to room 211. And that room has come to get a reputation for being quite haunted as well. From the couple times I've investigated in there, I would absolutely say so. So in the early 2000s, unfortunately, a woman did take her life in that room. She hung from the bedpost with a bathrobe. It's a little graphic. And it they found out at front desk because the whirlpool in that room was overflowing. It started coming down into the front desk, and they unfortunately found her. And since that point in time, paranormal experiences have been repeatedly reported from that area, including seeing a woman, hostility, things like that.
Do you have any idea of the backstory of that woman? Why she was that despondent?
So the idea of it is that she was with her boyfriend at the time, and he had been unfaithful that night, and it had really upset her. He was in the room with her. As far as the actual story goes, there was a cover up at some point. We're not sure exactly who. The hotel was under different ownership that time, and the systems have changed. The records are gone. I personally, myself, I've gone to the library and pored over obituaries from that time because, I mean, all I got was she was around my age. She's like late 20s. And I could not find anything about it. So it has been very heavily covered up. A name that we do get quite often in there is Marilyn on the spirit box and things like that. So that's really essentially the only lead that we have on her. It's a mystery that continues to be unraveled, but she is certainly in there.
Okay. Now you are in room 409, which has a whole story. So shoot, you gotta tell us.
Absolutely. Okay. This is a bit of a winding one. This is a developing one as well, but it's since January, the information has heightened and it has caused the activity to escalate, which makes me think that I'm right. So I'm sitting in room 409, which has long been known, before the early 2000s event on the second floor as the most haunted room in the hotel. It's the one with the big reputation. So from the 80s, there started being reports of a guy in a bowler hat about 5'9" in height, generally standardly built. And for a long time, he was the only spirit in the hotel that was reported as aggressive. Even in the year that I've worked here as a guest services representative, I have experienced guests leave this room in the middle of the night because of activity that they say has happened, things flying off shelves. A lady was actually held down in the upstairs bedroom by her neck when she tried to get up.
Oh my.
So I started looking a little more into it because obviously that kind of activity, that's concerning. Haunted hotel is great, but you don't want anyone experiencing that level of discomfort, especially when they're not expecting it. So I started looking into this a little bit more, and the activity at this hotel was matching up. There's a courthouse directly across the street from the hotel. It was matching up with the stuff that was going on in the courthouse as far as random acts of aggression, poltergeist activity. But there was one really specific piece of activity that happened in both places that kind of set the nail in the coffin for me. So during COVID, across the street where the courthouse is, 911 was getting phone calls out of the courthouse when nobody was on site to work. They would pick up and it would just be a blank 911 call. Nobody in the building. This last October, we had a bride staying in this suite. It's very popular for weddings as well. And she didn't know anything about it. And she just mentioned to me, she said, I had my smartphone charging on the table and I came back to missed calls from 911. And when I called them back, they had said that someone had called, just sat there and then hung up. So there was actually a disembodied 911 call that came out of this room as well. So that's a very unique piece of activity that is coming from both places. Now, the historical significance behind that is in the 1800s, before the hotel was built, Parkersburg did have a serial killer by the name of Joseph Isel. He went by John Schaefer when he was here. And all things considered, I feel like he's not very well known because he wasn't considered to be a very successful serial killer, to be honest with you. So in Parkersburg, in a span of a little under a year, he had 3 confirmed victims, and then he had 1 attempted 4th, which did ultimately get him caught, and he was the last public hanging in Parkersburg. That first murder that took place was in a saloon on Market Street, which is where the hotel sits today. And that saloon at one point in time was right where the courthouse is. And his first murder, Dan, was completely brutal. He took not only a hatchet to this guy, slit the throat. There were cuts on the spinal area. And this is somebody that he considered a friend, a fellow immigrant. So that took place there. And that's when I started to kind of collect, maybe our aggressive guy is Joseph Isel. Then I really got the kicker. So when you start going into the historical documents about Joseph Isel, there's not a whole lot, but there's a couple different articles and records that touch on where he lived at the time. So in the discontinued Ohio Valley Journal, it described his spot as a bakery with dwelling units on top. That is where the National Bank stood at the time of the article. And it was very close to the rail station. So by process of elimination, the hotel actually, before it was built, was a bakery with apartments on top. We're 1 street away from where the rail station would have been. And he killed his first victim across the street. So you have to think, by everything pointing to that, this is where he would have lived. So it would make a whole lot of sense for him to still be here. And I will say, since I've put 2 and 2 together, the activity in this area of the hotel specifically has increased tenfold.
Any more violent activity like that? Malevolent?
Not towards a person per se. There hasn't been any physical attacks to my knowledge. And as well, this isn't exactly a common subject quite yet. It's becoming more appreciated, I feel like, as time goes on. But I'm sure there are people that have had experiences and don't tell us because they don't know what happened or they're embarrassed. So as far as I know, no. However, there's been, again, high poltergeist activity. There has been things flying off the microwave and the bar shelves for no reason that wouldn't be able to. There have been the upstairs closet door opening and shutting on its own. And when we do investigations in here and specifically call him out, it gets intense.
Just intense feelings, or is there more happening around you?
Well, we're getting higher responses on the spirit boxes, things like that. But the last time we did an investigation in here, before we could even set up properly, before we had anything, recorders running, anything like that, we had simultaneously, there's a coffee table to the left of me. So we had a flashlight on that table, and the ground is level in this suite. There's certain parts of the hotel where it's not, but in this suite, it's level. The flashlight started going left and right, just very heavily. At that same point in time, somebody's phone flew off of the microwave. And then a third investigator who we had in the hallway walked back in and she said, guys, I don't want to freak you out, but something's just flown off the hallway in there. So this was simultaneously. It happened at a sweet spot. We couldn't quite catch it, but I anticipate, with as new as the paranormal program is here, keep watching because the investigations are going to get crazier. Absolutely.
Are you posting any videos from these investigations anywhere?
We do. So the Haunted Flutter House at Facebook page, however, where the ghost tour program is still sort of in its infancy, we haven't had a chance to do as many lockdowns as I would have liked, but it will continue to be posted. Yes.
Okay. Well, keep us informed. If you get some good evidence, we'll bring you back and show it.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
That sounds really incredible. So you've got the 3 ghosts, but you said somebody once said there was like 13 in there. So are you thinking there's a portal to the other side in there somewhere?
I do, actually. I do. I think, and I don't think it's even necessarily restricted to the hotel. I think it's quite strong here. But I think just Parkersburg in general. So there's rumored to be an underground tunnel system in between. And another thing I want to bring up with Joseph Isel, so where he was just convicted of the 3 murders here and the 4th attempted, but he originally had to come from Germany because he was caught up for murders there. And we don't know how many people he killed in Germany. And given his disposition, he's been compared personality-wise to Ted Bundy. They have a lot of similarities, very charming. The judge commented during his sentencing what a waste it was. He had people laughing on the way to his execution. I mean, this guy was a total riot. It wouldn't be out of context that he was responsible for some of the unsolved murders in Parkersburg. And I don't think he would have admitted it if he was, not even to his deathbed.
Was there a lot of unsolved murders there?
There are, being the early 1800s, mid 1800s, they of course don't have what they have today to catch killers and things like that. But especially on the Market Street area where all of his victims took place, there have been unsolved murders. Up the street is the Dill Center, which is an old shopping department from the 1900s. They actually have a few unsolved murders. And he was known to frequent that area. He was a carpenter. He built the altar in the Catholic church across the street that is still there today. So he's got ties to Parkersburg. It wouldn't be it wouldn't be out of character for a ghost at the hotel to pop up somewhere else in Parkersburg. So
Okay.
very well might be happening. William Chancellor actually has been seen outside of his house as well and down the street where one of his hotels used to formerly stand. It's a very unique area.
Yeah, sounds like it. You've got Civil War issues. You've got natural disaster, if you call a water tower bursting natural. And then you also have floods. I'm sure there's been deaths along the river.
Oh, absolutely. And I do think that Parkersburg, obviously Point Pleasant is where it really is, but Parkersburg has stronger ties to the Mothman than I think a lot of people realize. I mean, the Silver Bridge was just an hour away. You have to think they never found some of the things from that disaster. Mm-hmm. We're right up the river. The Mothman sightings on Route 47 and on Quincy Hill have both been prominent. It's just been virtually nonstop. You add the Native American land on top of it, things like that. The Blennerhassett Island that I mentioned formerly was Native American land for a long, long time before the Blennerhassetts got there as well.
Okay. Well, I'm not sure everyone knows the Mothman briefly was a cryptid that flew, glowing red eyes, seen by multiple people. Was that in the mid to late 60s?
Yeah, it was the 60s. So the whole thing's and the Mothman's been seen, I guess, other places in the world, but when people think Mothman, they do think Point Pleasant, West Virginia, because the unique thing about the Mothman story in comparison to other things is the sheer amount of witnesses and the level of credibility of the witnesses. Credibility can be a touchy thing, even if you've got all the proof. But the thing about the Point Pleasant witnesses at that point in time, they didn't have any reason for disruption. A lot of them were very conflicted by what they saw and what they were reporting, worried they were going to get, cast out for it. So you have an entire town essentially saying the same thing. And these are people that don't want any trouble. You have to just think about it. It really adds an edge of credibility that not every story has.
And then Mothman is also sometimes considered like a banshee. A sighting of him means something bad's going to happen.
Well, that's been the trend, actually, Dan, because not only the Silver Bridge, he's shown up before, disasters in Chicago. There's a rumor, not confirmed, that he showed up in New York around 9/11 and overseas as well. So that might very well be the case. What I found interesting was the immediate reports of the Men in Black that came right after.
Yeah.
Kindred Cold. I mean, that's fascinating. So that begs the question, is it maybe a UFO situation? If there was somewhere to hide UFOs, West Virginia would be perfect, wouldn't it?
That's for sure.
Honestly, I think it would.
If I remember right, the local newspaper editor had Men in Black coming to her or him, I don't remember, but trying to stop them from writing about this.
Yes, absolutely. And they were going into the local diners. They were stopping citizens. All things considered, I wasn't there, but it sounds like it was a pretty scary encounter for the locals. Mm-hmm. And that just makes you wonder even more, why were these government officials, whether or not they're the rumored Men in Black, what was so special about the Mothman that the government felt like they needed to show up after it happened? That adds another layer of it. But I think, it would have been impossible to cover up at that point. Point Pleasant is a small town, but you've got everyone banding together saying the same things. It's going to be pretty hard to deny. And I think that's why it has lived on as long as it has. It's such a rock solid story and connection.
And how does that link up to Parkersburg?
So it's just right up the road. It's about an hour. It's not very far at all. So there were reports around the time of the first sighting in November of him being seen Route 47, which is about 15 minutes away from the hotel where I'm sitting now.
Okay.
And then following up in the months, the sightings on Quincy Hill, which, when you think about the water tank disaster, he might have not been there right then, but it is interesting that that's where he was seen in Parkersburg. And that is somewhere that went on to have a freak accident.
Yeah, that's I don't know. The Mothman whole story is so convoluted, so everywhere. Like you said, Men in Black, UFO sightings, poltergeist activity.
Yeah, I mean, it's got the whole nines in the TNT area. I've been out there myself. It's kind of hard to investigate with actual equipment, but I will say the feeling out there is interesting. If he was going to live somewhere, that would definitely be it.
Wow. So your area has just drenched in paranormal activity and paranormal history.
Absolutely. And I think there are certain things that make certain towns more inclined to hauntings per se. So the amount of encounters is one thing. If you see a higher amount of encounters coming out of somewhere, that's generally it. But I think something about Parkersburg is how many historical structures are still actively standing today. It is it's the third largest city in West Virginia, I believe, but it is still a smaller city, and there hasn't been a whole lot of turnover like there might have been other places. So as far as the hotel here, this same stretch of road, we still have the Blennerhassett Museum, which is a historical building. We've got the Dill Center, which in addition, it's a venue now for music. I actually hosted a ghost hunt there myself. So it's an event venue. But downstairs, they still have pretty much all the equipment from the shopping center's time period. So it's just chock full of trigger objects as is. Then you go further up Market Street, and the historical district of Parkersburg, quite large, the Julian Historic District, still has several of the original homes from the citizens of Parkersburg back in the 1800s. Like I said, our founder's home is still up there. It is still owned by his descendants. Following up from that, Peter Van Winkle's home is still there. A lot of the different places were used during the Civil War, slave quarters, things like that. And then you've got Riverview Cemetery, which is a really historically haunted cemetery as well.
Mm-hmm.
So
you mentioned Peter Van Winkle a couple of times.
Yeah.
Who is that?
So he was a West Virginia senator. I'm not going to say too much because I don't know a whole lot about his life, but he was essentially the guy that pushed for West Virginia's statehood being broken. And he had a huge estate up in Parkersburg. He was good friends, actually, fun fact, with the poet Edgar Allan Poe. So Edgar Allan Poe actually visited West Virginia, Parkersburg specifically a few times, hung out here. As well, the strange ties to poets, Walt Whitman spent a good amount of time on Blennerhassett Island, and his poem, Queen of the Water, is actually about Blennerhassett Island. So it seems like there was something, magnetic about Parkersburg even before. So I think that's pretty incredible as well.
Well, for someone who says you don't know the history that well, you seem to know the history pretty well.
I would like to know more, honestly. Everything is fascinating. Where I am a historical fan, I've had instances where I've gone in Parkersburg just to research something and been met with activity that I wasn't expecting.
Well, in Parkersburg, what is the best, aside from your hotel, of course, the best activity you've come across?
Oh, see, this is where the unassuming comes in. I want to be honest with you. So there are several haunted places just right in Parkersburg, but the most active place I have been is out by DuPont. So it's a little out. It's Washington, West Virginia, technically. And they have still standing a 1900s lock and dam, the structure of it, down there right on the river, which is incredible that it has withstood that long. So there's a couple houses there as well. And in that area, the first day that I came, I should have sent you this video. I didn't think that we'd be talking about this, but I'm into urban exploration as well. So the first time that I went up there, that's what it was for, in pure daylight. And I just got knocked as soon as I opened my car door. It was like something pushed me, broad daylight in the morning. So I started filming, and I started filming this house. And at one point in the video, you can actually see eyes flash in the upstairs window.
Really?
Yeah, I didn't think we'd be touching on this today.
That's okay.
Yeah, it's on my Instagram. But honestly, and every time I've gone back since, there has been something happen. So when you look, I started researching the history of that. When you look into that, that also has ties to Parkersburg's history. So Stonewall Jackson's mom, her family is right from that area, right on those farms.
Okay.
Furthermore, the Neal family, who ended up buying the lower half of Blennerhassett Island after everything went down, they originated there too. And there was a path that the Blennerhassetts used to ferry onto the mainland right where that area is. So that's a perfect example of just, you go out by DuPont and all these oil gas companies, you don't expect to come across something so historically significant.
Mhm.
Everyone else I've talked to that's been there as well has had an experience, and it's just something that's not talked about. I feel like that happens a lot here.
What river is that flows by?
Ohio River.
So that's where the Haunted Majestic was working also.
Yeah. I spoke with him. I think he has one of the Blennerhassett's boats as well. But you can actually see from where I'm speaking about the lock and dam, it's just a few miles up to the end of Blennerhassett Island.
Okay.
Everything was really prominent right in that area as well. And for somewhere that's not really advertised as a paranormal location, if you go out and investigate there, that is one place I would say you would get activity.
Well, you've got West Virginia covered very well, apparently.
Yep. I mean, there's a lot to do, though. Like I said, it's not just the major areas, which Trans-Allegheny is incredible. Moundsville is incredible. I haven't been up to College Hill yet. I'm hoping to get up there soon. But if you look at all these in-between small towns, it's everywhere, and it's places that you wouldn't even expect. And I think that paranormal tourism has really started to take a turn in West Virginia, and people have started to notice how active it is here.
I know I've talked to the owner of the Haunted Majestic, Tom's, and I can't remember his first name, Dana.
Yeah.
And Dana was telling me they were kind of working on a trail where you could drive and see several different haunted places within a 24 or 48 hour drive.
Yeah, I mean, it wouldn't be hard, honestly. I think you'd have to have a couple different brands of trips just for everything, all the different stuff that has happened. But yeah, that's pretty incredible that he has that as well, and that he's even got a tie to the Blennerhassetts.
He talked to me about that ship. I did not know that was there. I was here to talk about the hospital ship on Memorial Day weekend. But then he started talking about this other ship, which is, I think, named the Blennerhassett. I'm sorry, I can never remember that word.
Blennerhassett. It's okay. It takes practice. It does. It genuinely does. And you know, that's amazing as well that he has something like that. He has a tie to that, and it really makes you think these hauntings that last. Emotional impact. So Margaret Blennerhassett, she is still buried on the island, but she didn't die there. Her body was taken from New York and buried back there. But her spirit is still seen there, apparitions of her. And it makes you think they lived there for a total of 5 or 6 years, I believe, somewhere around that. And that's the place where she felt so passionately about. She came back after death to continue. So you just have to think what kind of ties that has and how much it's lasted for West Virginia.
And according to Dana, that ship that is named after that island was brought up from the bottom of the river and saved.
That's what he said as well. And it would make sense. That is one of the places they would sometimes directly go straight up into land, but at other times they did come down to Washington Bottom, dock there, and come up. So when I talked to him about the lock and dam, he brought that up to me as well. So who knows? We might find something on there, and it all goes together.
Well, the conference you guys had really brought together a lot. I was a little disappointed that Trans-Allegheny, Flatwoods, Mothman people were not there. But you all brought in a whole bunch of the smaller people, smaller but just as haunted places to let us know where they were and what they were doing.
Yeah, it was an incredible opportunity. I think it was really clever. So that was hosted by Haunted Beckley and Charleston Ghost Tour Company. I met April and Scott when we did our first tour here at the Blennerhassett, and they have just been fantastic to work with. But I think it was really eye-opening to see how much there really is. And that is just the first convention, first conference, and we had that many people. And, I find it ironic because Blennerhassett Hotel, as of October 2021, was rated by Country Living Magazine the 6th most haunted in North America. That includes Canada, right? But when you speak to somebody, they don't know it's even here. They don't know anything about it. When I speak to people that are staying here and they're into ghosts, they didn't even know it was haunted. So this has really been a trailblazing opportunity.
Well, as you said earlier, the previous owners wanted nothing to do with the ghost.
They didn't, no. And where I say it is important to kind of make sure that your evidence checks through, because where there is no fire, there will be no smoke. Or,
Actually, that makes sense. If there's no ghosts,
If
your
it's
stories
not
are
actually haunted, you can spin as many tales as you want to. It might catch on for a little bit, but at the end of the day, it's going to be debunked when other investigators start getting into the location. So yeah, I had to be confident being the face of the hotel for this in regards. It goes the other way. If you try and deny some place being haunted that is genuinely haunted, it's going to come out anyways. There were still reports being made during that time. So this hotel has always been known to be active. The first recorded ghost stories were after the renovation in the 1980s. And that's when the bowler hat guy started showing up and everybody else. So it's been a lasting reputation. You can't really just shy away from that. I suppose you could try, but at the end of the day, it's not going to work. The reports were consistent. So it didn't matter.
You sent a video along, though. What are we going to be watching here?
Oh boy. So if anyone is familiar with the Estes method, they do sometimes use it on paranormal shows, things like that, investigations. It's a two-party investigation tactic. So one person is the asker and one person is the receiver, completely separated. The receiver is indifferent to the outside world. So they've got headphones in that are connected to a spirit box. I used an SB7, and then they're blindfolded to where they just can't see anything. And the other person begins asking questions. And while the receiver can't hear them, they just start saying whatever they hear on the box. So this video in particular is from room 211 in an investigation that we did a few months ago after one of the tours. This took place in the Whirlpool bathtub, which is interesting to me. The activity in the bathroom was really high, even though she technically was hung in the bedroom. And at one point in the video, at the very beginning, you can see two different orbs go across my screen.
Okay.
One thing I didn't expect from this video as well is most of the voices that I were getting were from a male. There's a male spirit in room 211 that talks over her, which I was not anticipating at all when I first started talking to the spirits in 211. So for the majority of that, my answers are reflecting that of an unknown male spirit in that room as well.
Could that have been the boyfriend that she was upset with?
You know, it's so hard to say for sure, but my personal feeling, having been doing this for a long time and being sensitive to these sort of things, I do feel as though the guy she was with that night has since passed.
Okay.
And I do feel like it could absolutely be him. It could also be another domineering male figure in her life that has since passed, or it could just be a really unpleasant resident hotel ghost that is just getting in on her business. Either way, we don't like him.
All right. Any chance that could be the serial killer?
Maybe I wouldn't say so though. Off the top of my head, no, because his crimes are they're not like alluding to any making one specific person upset.
Okay.
He wasn't really violent towards women on record. Not to say he never was, he likely was, but I don't feel like that. No, he's usually seen on one specific side of the hotel.
Okay. Okay, well, Race, let's run that video.
Okay.
Start now. Room 211.
Okay, I'm ready.
Room 211 in the Blennerhassett. Adra, the Estes Method. 9:45. Are you here with us?
I see you.
Who do you see?
Marilyn.
Is Marilyn in the bathtub?
She was.
Where is she now? Point my rods to Marilyn. My rods are pointing at the bedpost for reference. Who are you? What happened here?
She left.
Where did she go?
With me.
And who are you? What is your name?
Why?
I want to know. Everyone wants to know.
I can't.
Please tell us.
I just heard a growl.
Are you upset that we're here, trying to communicate with you? Who are you?
I am.
You are. Who? Where are you now?
That sounded like a sigh. There was a break in the static, and there was like a sigh. Help me.
What can we do for you? Are you trapped here?
Yes.
Do you want out of this place?
I've tried. Can't help.
We can help you get away from here. Where are you now?
Step 5 in there.
Point to where are you all in the bathtub?
On the side.
Where are you?
Room. Right beside.
Who are you beside?
With her.
Where is she?
You.
Are you with Marilyn?
I am. I can't.
Have you passed on also? Are you now dead?
Spirit.
Is it your spirit we're speaking to?
Yeah.
Are you a man?
Either. Where am I?
You're here with us. We're friends. We want to help you. Are you still with us?
How many people were in the room with you?
There were 3. But
Okay.
one of them was in the bedroom. So in that video, I'm in the bathroom. The voice you heard was Scott Worley of Haunted Beckley, who I've investigated with several times. So he was just 3 of us in the room. Wow.
Well, I was hearing voices very, very low, like EVP type, underneath what you all were saying. So if there was someone else in the room, that would cover it. But
yeah, no, see, we need to go back through that because I brought that up as well. One of the girls that I investigate with, she's a little bit new to it, so I just mentioned to her in passing after that. I said, try and keep it down next time. She said, Adra, I was completely in the separate room. So next time I speak with you, we might revisit that as well. I will note that we have done Estes Method twice in 211, and while they were both significant, none of the other 2 times were like the video you just saw. They said that they were completely freaked out by the accuracy and the time of my responses, and I couldn't hear a word they were saying.
That was pretty wild, no doubt about it. But I swear I was hearing someone else talking while you were waiting for the spirit to say something. I couldn't grasp it.
I thought so as well, but when we first watched the video back, Scott and I, we thought it might have been the other girl talking, but it wasn't. So we're going to have to probably revisit that video a little while. Actually, while you were playing that video, I thought I heard something in the bathroom behind me, like a pounding.
Okay.
Yeah, midday.
All right. The serial killer ain't getting enough attention. You probably want to say hi.
Clearly not. Yes. Hi, Joseph. Hi, Joseph. I will encourage anyone as well, if you're wanting to try the Estes method, it is recommended that you only do it for 15 minutes at a time, which we did not know the first time. We went for an hour straight, and I was genuinely out of commission for about 2 days afterwards. It was brutal.
I can imagine that.
Yeah.
All right. So that was done in the room where the girl allegedly committed suicide.
Yes. And the majority of it, now near the tail end, after the sigh, there was a vibe change. And then I started hearing the female voice come through. But the majority of that is a male voice. And that was not something I was anticipating at all. But he comes through strongly in that room.
There's got to be a reason for it, but I can't picture what it is. The answer may be in those EVPs if we could hear them, because a couple of them almost sounded like a woman.
Yeah.
So
we'll definitely have to look back through that and see that. That wasn't something I was anticipating as well. That was actually, that video was a quick session. We did 2 separate sessions. So we were only in the room for a total of half an hour. And it was just an intense pocket of time. It was incredible.
Well, some of the best EVPs I got was from the video cameras I set up to show hopefully something, but the EVP came through. So I would definitely look into that deeper.
Absolutely. And I'm excited to see, I haven't done a proper lockdown in 409 yet, but I am excited to see what we capture the first night I'm in here.
Definitely. So Adra, you all are going to make an announcement tonight.
You're
going to give us a little brief kind of a idea what it is. How about laying it on us?
Absolutely. So we are excited to announce that we are going to be hosting the first Appalachian Paranormal Convention, Paracon, here at the Blair Hassett on March 18th, 2023. This is the first time an event like this has ever taken place at the hotel. It will be a hotel-wide event. So we're going to have the usual everything from vendors to speakers. We're going to have some of Susan Shepard's work here, as well as a tarot reader room, some ghost hunting workshops, downtown ghost walk that is family friendly. But what I personally am really excited about is what's happening after the convention that night. We are locking down the 4th floor for the first time ever for an investigation.
So will there be people with rooms up there that?
Yes. So that is the only way to get into the investigation, is to book a room on the 4th floor. We're trying not to overload it too much and kind of preserve the evidence. There will be access to 409, and it's a genuine investigation with all of the equipment that's going to go solidly from 9 until 4 o'clock.
And you will be leading this, or do you bring somebody else in?
Nope, it'll be all me. So you got to trust me. But I think it's going to be incredible because we have had ghost hunters even more so. And it's been great seeing people from that community show up and capture things at the hotel. But this is the first time that it is solidly going to be locked down, an entire floor, one of the 2 most haunted floors.
So the hotel, will that be shut down to anyone except the ghost people, the people coming for the conference?
No, not at all. People are still welcome to book rooms on other floors of the hotel, and you very well might have an experience. But as far as for the actual investigation, you do have to be on the 4th floor. During the duration of that day, all of the hotel rooms and general areas aside from the restaurant are going to be used for the convention. So it's looking to be quite the event.
And your graphic didn't really have your way to get in touch with it or to keep up with it. Social media, how do people find out about all this?
Absolutely. So the www.theblennerhassett.com is our official hotel website. So you can call the phone number on that website at any point in time and get more information. You can also follow the Blennerhassett Hotel on social media, as well as Haunted Blen. So that's Haunted BLENN. And that is the account that we have kept separate to kind of post more evidence and events and things as it progresses, which it is certainly expected to. It's been an incredible response already for how new the program is. It's just a few months old and it's already turning into something great.
So you're doing the tours of Parkersburg as well, right?
Yes, every weekend in October actually starts September 30th this year. October 21st will be at the hotel only, so there won't be a town tour October 21st. That'll be the hotel.
Is anyone considering, are you considering running this tour more throughout the year, maybe once or twice a month?
Perhaps, that's not really my call to make. So these tours that I've taken over are Susan Shepard's Haunted Parkersburg tours. A lot of people in West Virginia are familiar with her. She was an amazing author, medium, astrologist, and she's very well known in the community. So she did those tours for 24 years before she passed. And so I have taken over as tour lead. And those tours are very informative as well. It's a 2-hour walking tour, but that's definitely something that might be on the table. I as well do own a research and tourism company, M45 Paranormal. So I separately do tours of other haunted locations in Parkersburg and around the country.
And how can people find that one out?
Social media, M45 Paranormal. So it's directly towards me. It's an email as well, m45paranormal@gmail.com.
So M as in Mary, 45.
Yeah.
Paranormal, right?
Yes, that's the
All
one.
right.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I will also be at the Paranormal Convention in Michigan in August. If anyone that's watching is going to head up to that, I know it's a huge annual event. So I will be there for both of the days for anyone to come speak to.
Well, Adra Johnson, and I'm going to try this again. Blennerhassett. All right. Hotel in Parkersburg, Virginia. Your presentation was incredible at the conference, and you certainly didn't disappoint tonight. You were great.
Thank you so much for having me, Dan, and I look forward to keeping you updated as it goes on.
Yeah, keep in touch. I look forward to hearing from you.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Take care. Have a good night.
You too.
That whatever session it was with the Frank's box. And yeah, I'm old-fashioned, guys. I still use the old-fashioned names. That's still a Frank's box. That was a little creepy. Right? That was worthy of bringing her on here. But as you can see, West Virginia is going to be the new Mecca for ghost hunting. So if you are into it, if you're into ghost hunting, into going into haunted places, into cryptids, the West Virginia has a Bigfoot museum, and it also has an upcoming conference on cryptids and all this. There's all kinds of haunted places to go to. So check out West Virginia when you get the chance, and specifically Parkersburg. And I know the temperature in most Midwest and Southern United States is amazingly hot right now. So I want you folks to stay cool, and everybody else stay spooked. Good night.